have some seats up front. Don't be shy. So it's up here if someone is outside. Olivier. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. Thank you for getting up and attending this event. With this microphone. Oh, here we go. I'm Olof Skog. I'm the EU ambassador to the United Nations, for those of you who don't know me. As you can see, this is a budget restricted event. So I'm also standing in as a moderator. We couldn't afford a CNN anchor that usually people that come to lead the kind of events. Look, I just wanted to welcome you all. Thank you for coming. And I wanted to first hope that some of you have heard of or are faintly aware of the notion of the Global Gateway, which is very much the EU and Teams Europe offer as a partnership to the rest of the world as we roll out and accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. There's so many initiatives out there, and what the EU and Team Europe is offering is sustainable financing and connecting the dots between clever projects that implements the 2030 Agenda and the financing the private sector and the partnerships that Europe can offer to make sure that they are sustainable in every aspect of that word. Now, the way we wanted to do this morning, we have 1 hour. The idea is for the Commissioner of International Partnerships, Jutta Urpilainen, who is visiting New York today, to give a little bit of an overview of Global Gateway. We have Director Luc Bagour, also from Brussels, who will dig a little bit more into the details, but briefly. And we have 4 ambassadors here from Fiji, Namibia, the Philippines, and Ecuador, who will also be able to say a few words about their experience of Global Gateway projects being rolled out in their respective countries. But before all that, we have the most prominent Deputy Secretary General ever, Amina Mohammed, who is blessing us with her presence, I think straight from a flight this morning. So we're all the more grateful, Amina, that you're here. And if technology is with us, I would suggest, Amina, if you want to say a few words, maybe from the podium, and a warm welcome to you.
So, Olaf, you forgot the last DSG was Swedish? Thank you so much, Commissioner Urpilainen, my sister and friend. Welcome, Excellencies, dear partners and friends, many of you in the room. A real pleasure to join everyone this morning and to discuss our collective efforts towards rescuing the SDGs, as the SG has said over and over again, and really try to deliver better for people, for humanity, but also on our planet, recognizing that we have an existential threat with climate change. We're approaching the halfway point of the 2030 Agenda this September. Many reasons for disappointment and for concern, but also with a sense of urgency and conviction that we have never been more able to get to where we need to get to than we have in this world, and so we're hopeful. The data is crystal clear. The SDGs are severely off track. They were off track before COVID, so let's know that those challenges that we speak to today exacerbated it. They were not the reasons. There are many more root causes to why we were not on track for the SDGs. And so when we talk about the socioeconomic ramifications of COVID, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the global cost of living crisis, proliferating conflicts, and the worsening of the triple planetary crisis, this really underscores how much lives and livelihoods are affected in the millions around the world. The most vulnerable, of course, being hit first and worst, seeing poverty rising, inequalities within and still between countries are widening and deepening, the rights of women and girls, we would say, under siege, and the climate crisis going from bad to worse. Developed countries adopted expansionary fiscal and monetary policies to deal with these overlapping crises and have now largely returned to their pre-pandemic trajectory for economic growth. And this is good news. We should say when we get organized and we put these policies in place, it works. However, we've seen developing countries that have not and could not have done the same thing. And this is why we're here today, to try to find how the collective can move towards being more successful for those most in need. Vulnerable middle-income countries clearly, in many cases, deny debt relief and concessional financing. Special drawing rights are not really benefiting those who need them most, nor are they rechanneled in an optimal way, for which we are looking to change. And the common framework for debt treatment is not yet effectively working. It's deeply concerning, but it's not surprising that 60% of low-income countries and least developed countries are currently in or at high risk of debt distress. As I say, we have, according to the IMF, 82 countries that are on debt row. This is double the number from 2015, leaving them with limited fiscal space to provide even basic services, let alone invest in a sustainable future. Governments are having to choose between whether they invest in health or they invest in water and sanitation or in education. These are choiceless choices. No government should have to have themselves in that position. And worse still, if they go to the markets, many developing countries may be charged interest rates that are 8 times higher than their developed counterparts. So much stacked up against the developing world. For these reasons, the SDG Summit this September must be a reflection and a turning point. It must generate new trust, new hope, and new momentum for action. We must leave that summit with plenty to do, and to do it collectively in partnership. And it begins by securing a breakthrough needed to massively scale up financing of at least $500 billion a year, and this has been proposed in the SDG stimulus. It also requires a clear roadmap to advance deep and structural reforms of the international financial architecture, difficult, challenging, but needed. And lastly, it requires progress across other areas of our common agenda, from going beyond GDP to agreeing a global digital compact. With breakthroughs in these areas, we can both increase fiscal space, we can mobilize additional investments to finally give developing countries the opportunity to deliver on their right to development. But this in turn depends on good faith, forward-leaning partnerships on the ground. And this is where initiatives such as the EU Global Gateway can play a critical role, particularly if they build on the convening power and the capacities of the UN and our country teams and the partnerships of the EU Team Europe. Excellencies, I want to commend the EU for highlighting how the Global Gateway, through its focus on key transformative areas such as climate and energy, digital, infrastructure, transport, health and education, contribute to advancing the SDGs in close partnerships with developing countries. And I look forward to the first collective EU voluntary review at the High-Level Political Forum this year, which I'm sure will once again demonstrate the EU's steadfast commitment to the 2030 Agenda. As the EU rolls out the Global Gateway strategy on the ground, you can count on the UN resident coordinators and a strong RC system to rally expertise from across our UN system and to convene donors and partners to drive coherent, integrated and effective responses for the SDGs in support, of course, of national priorities. If engaged at the onset of planning new Global Gateway flagship initiatives, the UN can fully deploy its assets, from its extensive presence in country to its trusted relationships with government, and to the knowledge of the financing needs and the pipelines in host countries. Together, I believe we can leverage the tools and the approaches that can deliver results and impact, unlock much of the needed financing in support of the SDGs. In particular, I want to highlight the joint work that we have already done on the INFFs, the Integrated National Financing Frameworks, which UNDP leads, and can help countries strengthen their planning processes, but have a greater understanding of what their finance mix is, how to leverage better the efficiencies from domestic resource financing, and to bring in private sector financing. We're ready to explore how we can move together with the EU Global Gateway strategy, support countries in increasing their SDG investments. At the same time, we know we have to strengthen these transitions with the appropriate social protection measures. And to achieve the success of these investments in the long term, we must support national institutions and their capacities. Scale and a sense of urgency require people on the ground, and the people on the ground that are ready and willing to do this are within the public services, are within civil society, are within academia, but they just need to be brought together and given the capacities to do so. So, dear friends, the transformation envisioned by the 2030 Agenda remains both entirely possible and absolutely essential, but time is running short. And I hope that the discussions today can give us another boost to the momentum that we need for the SDG Summit in September. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amina, for that encouraging but also demanding words and for your leadership leading up to the SDG Summit and beyond. Very pleased to welcome Jutta Urpilainen, Commissioner for International Partnerships for the European Commission. Please, thank you.
Your Excellencies, dear Amina, ladies and gentlemen. I have to say that I'm very pleased to speak with you today about the European Union's Global Gateway strategy. Our initiative to promote sustainable development and resilience around the world. And I was thinking that maybe I should start with why we decided to create this strategy. Like Deputy Secretary General Amina already described, we are living in the midst of unprecedented change. From floods to wildfires to storms, climate change really threatens lives and livelihoods in every corner of the world. And still, as we know, it is just one of the challenges before us. The world must also manage the fast pace of digital innovation, transforming how we live and work. And recent global shocks have brought further distress. First, unfortunately, COVID-19, and then Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Both hit the world economy, both showed socioeconomic disparities. Both have also fueled a world in which multilateralism itself has come under attack. Amid these crises, how can we achieve a fair and more sustainable future? The European Union shares the United Nations' belief that only through multilateralism can we respond to the challenge effectively. And we know the Agenda 2030, it really offers the roadmap towards a world that leaves no one behind. But as Amina described very well, today this agenda is threatened. And that's why we must step up our efforts. We must match the scale of the challenges with equally ambitious action. And this is the idea, the why Global Gateway was created. The EU wants to get the 2000 Agenda, all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, back on track. So, dear friends, through the Global Gateway, the EU seeks to mobilize 300 billion euros to foster strategic autonomy and resilience in our partner countries. We achieve this by forging smart, clean, and secure links in climate and energy, digital, health, transport, and education and research. So, as I said, Global Gateway contributes to all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we deliver it on a Team Europe approach, bringing together the resources and expertise of the EU institutions, but also from 27 member states and their finance institutions. Team Europe was born as a response to the pandemic. In the middle of the pandemic, we realized that we need to work more closely together. And Team Europe has enabled us to act quickly and decisively on critical issues, including Russia's invasion on Ukraine. So we want to work closely with the UN system on Global Gateway, supporting the UN Secretary General's objectives in our common agenda. The EU and its member states, together as Team Europe, we know we are currently the world's largest provider of official development assistance. But we recognize that public sector finance alone will never be enough to meet the scale of need. And that's why the Global Gateway strategy also creates strong links with the private sector. So we are leveraging the EU funding to offer a mix of grants, concessional loans, and also guarantees to direct private sector finance to the countries that need it most. Global Gateway is also about high quality partnership. A gateway, by definition, goes both ways. So, for example, at the 2022 EU-AU Summit, so EU-Africa Summit, African leaders emphasized the need for strategic autonomy in vaccine and pharmaceutical production. Currently, Africa imports over 99% of its vaccines and 94% of its medicines. But with right incentives, we can induce pharmaceutical companies to invest in increasing production capacity in Africa. And this is why Team Europe has already mobilized 1.1 billion euros to ramp up vaccine production for Africa in Africa. And today the African-led projects are really taking off. We can see the results in South Africa, Rwanda, Senegal, and also Ghana. It is really inspiring to see that local vaccine production is being championed by partners, and that much more can be done to bring new technologies to the continent and to diversify also value chains. So, dear friends, this is just one example of Global Gateway moving rapidly to meet the needs. In all, we have earmarked and also adopted 87 Global Gateway flagship initiatives for this year, 2023. And shortly, we will hear about 4 of them in greater detail by our guests. I want to end by saying that Global Gateway is ultimately about partnership. The EU is already working with many of you, and I really look forward to deepening our dialogue today with the United Nations, but also with each and every of you. I believe together we can deliver lasting benefits for your countries across the world. Thank you very much for participating and looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for an excellent presentation about the geopolitics and the whys and the whats of the Global Gateway. Colleagues, many of us are mostly involved in negotiating political declarations and such on a daily basis, but I think it's also extremely useful if every one of us also understands and because we do have influence in our respective countries, about the possibilities, in this case of Global Gateway and what it has to offer. So just to go slightly a bit more into the nuts and bolts of this, so that you will be aware of the opportunities and the offer that the Global Gateway represents, we have invited Director Luc Bagour to say a few words about how this actually works in practice.
Thank you. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. After this introduction from the UN Deputy Secretary General and the Commissioner, I would like to move on the second part of this event, which will consist of a short presentation of the Global Gateway Strategy and a presentation of 4 concrete examples that are being already implemented in different countries of the world. And indeed, the projects that we are presenting today, except the one for Ecuador, have been recently endorsed at the last Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment in Hiroshima, a shared commitment by the G7 to advance public and private investment in sustainable, inclusive, resilient, and quality infrastructure, which proves the importance of these projects. And I would like to thank the presence of the permanent representative of Fiji, Namibia, Philippines, and Ecuador, and of course the presence of all of you today. Global Gateway is providing partners with a quality EU offer, aligning partners' interest with EU interest. As already said, it is the EU's contribution to narrowing the global investment gap, reducing strategic dependencies, supporting the twin transition, green and digital, beyond European borders. Global Gateway is implemented through a Team Europe approach, and Team Europe consists of the EU institutions, its member states, their diplomatic network, finance institutions, including national development banks and implementing agencies, as well the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And the Team Europe approach is a way to strengthening coordination, coherence, and complementarities of actions to scale up European impact and raise Europe as a partner of reference. We need all the firepower of Europe to reach the level of investment we want to have. And private sector participation in this context and private capital are key to mobilize the investments. Of course, the EU private sector is already active in the Global Gateway domains and interested in close cooperation. Companies do not necessarily need additional public financial resources, but they welcome support to make their investment more attractive to partner countries. So our investment should be part of a broader package to offer high-quality, holistic solutions, and we consider this constitutes the comparative advantage to our offer in the Team Europe spirit. We do not simply build bridges or roads. In parallel, we provide support to policy reform, technical assistance, vocational training, etc. And our objective is to mobilize 300 billion euro of investments from 2021 to 2027. Global Gateway aims at boosting smart, clean, and secure links in the digital, climate, energy, and transport sectors, and to strengthen education, research, and health systems across the world. For partner countries, Global Gateway intends to provide a qualitatively superior and values-based alternative to other public offers. And it is in line with the European model of sustainable and transparent investment. Global Gateway investments are an offer to be discussed and implemented in agreement with partner countries. So the needs of the partner countries are always the starting point. At the upcoming SDG summit in September, the heads of state and government will review progress in the implementation of the 2030 agenda and provide political guidance for the way forward in the remaining years towards 2030. And as already said, and I would like to insist on this, Global Gateway is the offer from the EU to implement the SDG and is totally aligned to the achievement of all goals, as well as to other major commitments such as the Paris Agreement. I would like now to talk about some specific projects that are considered of major importance for their region. Then the ambassadors will have the opportunity to comment. In first place, we are going to look at a country that is also a small island state, Fiji. In this case, we congratulate Fiji for their goal, that is to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, in line with the Paris Agreement. And the EU is very much aligned with Fiji in this respect, since the EU is also working in that direction. So in Fiji, the renewable energy share of electricity is expected to increase by 50 percentage points, from 55% to 70%. And the EU is supporting the increase of renewable electricity production by facilitating investments into a cascade system of hydropower plants. We will do so through guarantees schemes and through loans by the European Investment Bank. Now, on the same field, climate change, but moving to another continent, in this case, Africa, we will look at our partnership with Namibia on the energy sector, where we are working on critical raw material value chain and renewable hydrogen. To achieve this, we are helping, supporting to improve the investment climate, as well as supporting regulatory reforms and capacity building. And we are co-financing investment projects in sustainable energy and hydrogen. And the European Union and its member states will provide up to 110 million in grants, and the European Investment Banks will provide 500 million euro loans. Now moving to Asia and to the digital sector in Philippines. We are supporting the improvement of the internet connection through acquiring rights of use of existing or new fiber maritime submarine cables. This will improve the connection of the government and the country as a whole. And this will also improve Philippine competitiveness. Furthermore, this will support the access to Copernicus data, and in particular to improve environmental management. Finally, is now the turn of Latin America, and specifically Ecuador, where on the climate sector we are supporting the country to have a Green Deal to develop an inclusive, sustainable, and resilient economy. And the aim is to establish a national framework for decarbonization, to invest in water and sanitation projects to provide access to water, sanitation services, and irrigation at local level, to support sustainable urban mobility plans, and to invest in energy efficient urban investment projects. And there, Europe as a whole, the institutions, the member states, will provide a little bit more than 1 billion euro in the coming years. So now I thank you very much for the presentation. I give the floor back to Romain. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Luc, and we'll hear from the four ambassadors in just 1 minute. But I was thinking, looking out at the group here, we have plenty of representatives of countries beyond the four here. And I think many of them are asking themselves, so, okay, so we have some excellent projects going on, some ideas. What do they do in order to get the Global Gateway engaged on this? Is the best way to just contact the EU head of delegation in their respective countries? Is that the way to go, Luc? Commissioner?
Okay.
Yes?
No, yes, of course.
Yeah.
The best way is to engage with our delegated spot and to discuss the project they have so that we can assess that they fit and they match with our own objectives and the Global Gateway strategy.
Excellent. Look, and colleagues, so you know, this delegation is always at your disposal. We realize that the technical capacities required, we do not possess here, but we are always ready to act as a facilitator to establish those contacts if you are looking at with increasing interest on how you can connect to this Global Gateway initiatives. Now, thank you very much, colleagues, for joining us this morning. 4 ambassadors, very busy always. So we're very grateful that you took some time off to come here. Ambassador Filippo, you are new to the UN. Welcome, by the way. And as Luc just said, a small island development state with high climate ambitions, but also, of course, feeling the shocks of climate change maybe more than most other countries. So, Ambassador, I just wanted to ask you to say a few words about how this Global Gateway project is assisting you in terms of your ambition to become carbon neutral by 2050.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Skog. And thank you for this opportunity to speak on the merits of the Global Gateway project in its efforts to advance Fiji's Paris climate goals. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency early this morning, Amina Mohammed, the UN Deputy Secretary General, and Her Excellency Jutta Urpilainen, EU Commissioner for International Partnerships, and many of my own distinguished colleagues and ambassadors who have joined us for this panel discussion this morning. The Global Gateway project, 12 million Fijian dollar, roughly 5 million euros worth of river cascade hydropower scheme to be implemented in Viti Levu, Fiji's main island. Under this project, a system of interconnected catchments under a cascade scheme with several hydropower plants will be implemented. Among them, on the main island in Andarivatu is already operational but will be enlarged. New hydropower plants are expected to be developed upstream in Galiwana and the Upper Wailoa and Galiwana rivers, and downstream at Vatu Kotokoto in the lower Mba area, the Mba River. Before I address this topic, I would like to share with you some context that would help better understand Fiji, not only as a small island developing state, but a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which, although surrounded by water, in spite of being an archipelagic state, suffers from occasional drought and decreased rainfall, both of which are directly linked to climate change. Historically, Fiji's energy sector has been completely dependent on hydropower to generate electricity. But climate change has altered the climate patterns, and now we have less rainfall to fill up our rivers where Fiji's main dams were built. This has led Fiji to resort to a mix of diesel and hydropower to cater for electricity generation. However, as you are aware, diesel, like any other fossil fuel, is a costly energy source for seeds, as it is imported from overseas, which only adds to the transportation cost and makes energy an unstable source. For many years, the Fijian people have been at the mercy of these power cuts. In this regard, the Global Gateway project is one of immense benefit to the Fijian people, as it very much falls in line with Fiji's National Development Plan to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, if not earlier, as necessitated by the climate crisis. Most importantly, the Global Gateway project urgently facilitates efforts towards Fiji's mitigation commitments. Indeed, mitigation whereby a country can reduce its carbon footprint through reduction in emissions is no easy achievement, even for seeds, which have relatively smaller emissions compared to heavily industrialized nations. The Global Gateway project is expected to reduce Fiji's dependence on fossil fuels by 15% enabling Fiji to depend on renewable energy sources from its current 55% to 70%. A small but a significant percentage towards low carbon and green transition. Indeed, the long-term reduced dependence on fossil fuels to meet the growing electricity demands has added the advantage of supplying Fijians with electricity at a reduced cost per unit. The rising inflation, the sharp increase in fossil fuels, including diesel, has made it harder for Fijians to pay for electricity. The Fiji government welcomes the Global Gateway project and would request that a similar project be earmarked to assist Fiji, as well as other seeds, to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Very clear on the road towards less dependency and also in favor of a green transition. Ambassador Neville, thank you for coming this morning. And as we heard, the project we're working with together in Namibia relates to green hydrogen. So a similar effort towards green transitions and the energy source of the future, perhaps. And Neville, do you want to comment a little bit about what that project means to Namibia?
Thank you, Olof. I picked up that you found a way to work in the word future in that phrasing there. So when people look around here, they identify me usually with my role as co-facilitator in arranging the Summit of the Future. So, green energy is definitely linked to that vision. But let me say thank you for the opportunity this morning and to just share with you quick few points about this amazing partnership that we have established now with Commissioner Juta and her people in Europe. We are really delighted that we have turned a page in terms of the cooperation that we now have that is driven towards a much more productive but also a mutually beneficial arrangement between our country and with Europe. One of the advantages of coming late to independence, perhaps, is that we have now the opportunity not to repeat mistakes of the past, but leapfrog straight into where the world is today and to try and catch up as fast and as quickly as possible. And this is exciting times in Namibia. This is really a major project that is bringing a new, fresh air of optimism and hope into our country because we are touching on technology, we're touching on how to save our planet and contribute towards a greener future for all of us. In November last year, we signed with the EU a memorandum of understanding during the Conference of the Parties in Sharm el-Sheikh, and this was specifically focused on developing this green hydrogen industry in Namibia. We are pleased that the MOU is premised on value addition, which the Namibian government strongly encourages as it forms a key part of our efforts to industrialize. Just last Friday, on the 26th of May, the Namibian government and Hive and Hydrogen Energy signed a feasibility and implementation agreement to develop the country's green hydrogen flagship project. This milestone signifies our commitment to develop a green hydrogen industry that has the potential to transform the economic landscape of the country. Now, you may ask, why is green hydrogen such an attractive sector or development for Namibia? This is simply put because of the combination of superb wind and probably the best solar resources. Proximity, well, next to Morocco, I have to say, there are some good solar opportunities in Morocco. But the proximity to the sea and an enabling investment environment have placed Namibia in an advantageous position to develop green hydrogen at competitive prices. Now, this partnership and the project underway is helping us realize a development that was once thought as too ambitious of a plan for a country like ours, Today, with the interconnectivity that we have with the rest of the world, even the small size of a country should not be an impediment to develop major projects like this. Under the EU's Global Gateway Initiative, Namibia has acquired funding amounting to around 450 million euro that will be deployed to developing the green hydrogen industry, and presents the Namibian government with an opportunity to participate in the Hyphen Hydrogen Energy Project as an equity partner. The project is in its entirety worth about 10 billion US dollars, and it entails developing a large-scale vertically integrated green hydrogen plant. The project will be developed in phases over 4 years and will employ 15,000 people during the construction phase and a further 3,000 once operational. The Namibian government will avail 4,000 square kilometers of land for the development of the project, and the project, once fully developed, will have capacity to produce 2 million tons of green ammonia and 350,000 metric tons of hydrogen per annum. It will further have a renewable energy capacity of 7 gigawatt and 3 gigawatt electrolyzers. The project will significantly contribute to Namibia's economic growth and development through income derived from the leasing of the land and royalties and taxes the state will collect from the project. The project production of green hydrogen at such a large scale and use thereof will further aid Namibia to decarbonize. On a broader scale, the development of green hydrogen industry will significantly enhance the country's energy generation capacity. And you must be aware that this is one of our biggest challenges in the sub-region, energy generation. Without that, certainly industrialization will be hampered. And this is our contribution to finding a solution to give the impetus for industrialization to be driven forward. As the energy produced will not only cater for the domestic market, but it will also be exported to countries within Southern Africa, significantly elevating the power deficits within our region, and in turn positioning Namibia as a strong contender to become a renewable energy hub. So let me conclude and say this development will present opportunities for investment in value chains, enable the transfer of technology, development of supporting infrastructure, and assisting in developing the requisite skills set that will be required for the industry. Now, the bottom line here is that we are excited to see SDG 17 in action. Partnership in this instance is really a partnership that's going to transform both our own development, but will make an incredible contribution to the needs that are currently in Europe. And just to say that the project in its entire phase will spare not only the development of the industry itself, but also develop transport corridors that will connect Namibia all the way to Maputo. But it will also take advantage of partnerships that we have now established and signed with the ports of Rotterdam and Antwerp. And there is a memorandum of understanding with the Namibian Ports Authority to increase trade by upgrading the port of Walvis Bay and Lüderitz. And this will be the transmission belt for these products to reach Europe. Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks so much, Neville. You started out by talking about the future, and let me add a caveat here, because when I look at this panel and myself, 4 young men, I think we all realize that this is not what the future looks like. And I think Amina and Jutta too mentioned this, that the gender equality, the empowerment of women has to be an absolutely integral part of everything we do. And I think it is an integral part of the scrutiny of all the projects that Global Gateway looks at. With that, and Neville, you ended in an excellent segue to Ambassador Antonio's and the projects we are developing together with in the Philippines about connectivity. In this case on the digital agenda, a lot of work going on here about the digital compact, etc. And a big part of that is to making sure that the connectivity leaves no one behind. So, Ambassador, maybe you want to offer a few words about how this project with Global Gateway in the Philippines contributes to the implementation of that part of the SDG agenda.
Thank you, Ambassador Olaf, for the invitation to participate this morning. And of course, Her Excellency Jutta and her team, thank you for the presentation on the EU Global Gateway. Of course, Deputy Secretary General Amina has left, but we're also glad that she was able to join us earlier. Fellow colleagues, Their Excellencies, the permanent representatives of Ecuador, Fiji, and Namibia, distinguished guests, a pleasant morning to all of you. The Philippines is part of the EU's Global Gateway Priority Flagship Project 2023, with two main components, namely the number one, the Copernicus program, and number two, digital connectivity. The Copernicus Philippines program was launched last month in Manila and is the first ever space program in Southeast Asia. The program intends to establish a national mirror site archiving satellite data with the aim of fostering data access, storage, processing, and exchange among Philippine authorities to tackle disaster risk management and climate change. In addition, the program will raise awareness, promote skills development, and focus on three pilots, such as A, improved environmental management, B, strengthening of resilience to natural hazards and climate change, and C, marine spatial planning. The digital connectivity component of this project will be built on the Copernicus program. In order to ensure that the mirror site functions well, there needs to be fast access to Copernicus satellite data to ensure that the data can be accessed, downloaded, and exchanged in real time, particularly for disasters. This digital connectivity initiative is expected to enhance connectivity to establish a reliable connection through acquiring indefeasible rights of use on existing or new fiber submarine cables. As an archipelago and as one of the most vulnerable countries to natural disasters and adverse impacts of climate change, we welcome this project as responsive to the demand back home for enhanced connectivity and for innovative approaches to build disaster and climate resilience. This project is also in line with the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, which identifies digital transformation as an underpinning strategy to achieve the country's development priorities and goals. The project allows timely access and makes use of relevant data, thus supporting the Philippine government's capacities for decision-making and monitoring of policy implementation based on timely and accurate data. Increased digital connectivity also facilitates an integrated systems approach to governance, featuring strong coordination and cooperation across sectors and levels. Further, the project allows for strategic planning and foresight. Finally, let me reiterate our appreciation for the EU Global Gateway and its focus on green transition and sustainable connectivity in our country as well as in ASEAN. As a valued partner of the Philippines, we thank the EU again for this initiative, which we are convinced will be truly impactful and transformative towards enhanced connectivity, inclusivity, and a prosperous and resilient future for us Filipinos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So finally, Ecuador, there, Hernan, the project, as we heard, is very much about decarbonization, the economy of and the energy sources of Ecuador. Can you tell us a little bit about the Ecuadorian experience from this project?
Thank you. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the European Union for convening this meeting. We are very pleased by the current state of the relationship between Ecuador and the EU and the existing bilateral cooperation in different areas. I would like also to thank the EU for presenting the Global Gateway strategy and its various projects around the world. We would like to congratulate the EU and his members state for this important initiative and wish Team Europe every success in this activity. The Global Gateway strategy will help address the most crucial global challenges, from the fight against climate change to the improvement of health care systems, as well as boosting the competitiveness and security of the global supply chain. In this context, Ecuador highly welcome the two flagships projects have been selected to be included in the Global Gateway strategy for Ecuador and will be presented at the next EU CELAC summit to be held in Brussels next July. Both the Green Transition Project and the Ucamari EU-Ecuador Forest Partnership, along with others that are still under formulation, will support Ecuador in the achievement of the SDGs and will strengthen the process of building our national vision for decarbonization, where we seek to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the long term. These projects will be crucial on our efforts to attract investments in strategic sectors such as infrastructure, digital transformation, competitiveness, climate change, environmental protection, and public health. Excellencies, dear colleagues, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight Ecuador's efforts to achieve the ecological transition with implementation of an innovative debt swap mechanism aimed to the biodiversity conservation in the Galapagos Island. This financing initiative generates savings for the country around $1.1 billion. A portion of the funds from this transaction will be invested in the creation of the Galapagos Life Fund, whose objective is to promote the maintenance, growth, and security of the natural capital of the Galapagos Island and its marine ecosystem. The board of directors of the fund met in Galapagos this weekend to establish the structure and operation mechanism of the fund. To end, I would like to reiterate our gratitude to the European Union, and we look forward to strengthening our bilateral cooperation, which has a solid foundation in the historical ties that unite us, and the principle that we share. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And thank you, including for the reference to the debt swap initiative on Galapagos. Look, colleagues, we have a few minutes before 10, so I just wanted to really encourage those of you who are here and who sit on a few questions maybe in your minds about Global Gateway and how it is relevant for your country's development and future. So I just invite you to make best use possible of either of the ambassadors here, myself, but in particular Luke and the commissioner who are in New York today. So I open the floor for any reflection, question, or advice, inquiry. Floor is open. We have a few minutes.
I was thinking, first of all, thank you very much, Your Excellencies, for your contribution to this event. And I wanted to comment actually of what you, dear colleague from Namibia, raised, because I recently visited your country. And this new mutually beneficial partnership, which you mentioned. The whole idea is that we are not only exporting critical raw materials or green hydrogen from Namibia to Europe, where we definitely need critical raw materials in order to succeed in our green transition. But we are also creating value in Namibia, to your society and the citizens of Namibia. And precisely through this 360 degrees approach, where we are making infrastructure investment, indeed, but we are also strengthening the institutions. We are, I would say, also strengthening the business environment, focusing on the regulatory frameworks, for instance. We are training young people, young labor force in your country. So we are enabling an environment where hopefully we can support Namibia's industrialization. And I think this is the whole DNA of the Global Gateway, that we are strengthening also our partners' sovereignty, strategic autonomy, and self-reliance, so that you can be more independent and you can create value also to your society. So I just wanted to comment that because I recently had a very constructive meeting with your president, and like you said, the MOU is signed, and now we are preparing the roadmap, and really the progress has been made. So thank you for that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we have or are running out of time, and unless I see someone vividly waving their hand, we will break here. And I think Luke is still available if someone wants to have a private chat with him. But otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. In particular, my fellow panelists here for making time this morning, and thank you, Commissioner, for making it to New York, and Luke for being present as well. So again, much appreciate your attendance. And again, just a reminder, the delegation is here for you, and let's work together to make sure that the Summit of the Future and this SDG Summit now this year really becomes ambitious and also concrete in its implementation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.